if you are a video editor, you will definitely love this zoom in effect. You will definitely want to make use of this keyframe feature on the editing app. Yes, and for the tutorial, I'm going to be using the CapCut app, and I'm going to be showing you how to make use of this feature or this particular key on the CapCut editing app, which is the keyframe. Yes, keyframe add a lot of attention and a turnaround in videos. Whenever you are making video, it makes people or the audience watching your video connect with you directly. So as you can see, I am zooming in currently and I'm zooming out, and there are a lot of other things you can use keyframe for. So let me show you how to use this feature on the CapCut app. Okay, so let me quickly show you some of the use of this keyframe on the CapCut app. So we have the zoom in effect. So if you don't know the keyframe key I'm talking about, see it here. Okay, let me show you. See, this is the keyframe this thing. And what does it mean? It means that you want to create your own personal animation. Yes, you don't want to use the prepaid, the paid and not the paid, the already made templates, transactions or anything they have created for you already. You want to do your own. That's the meaning of this keyframe, or you want to add your own. So let us start with number one, the zoom in effect. So if I want the zoom in effect, I'll do it from here. I'll click on the this thing on the keyframe icon. If you can see, it's not showing something like a minus. That is, you have added one of this thing here. Then you will zoom. You will look for a particular. If you want to be zooming in slowly, you will shift to that point. Then you do what? All right, you do what? You add it here. Then you don't add again. Sorry. You move to that point, then you zoom out. So just see now, immediately I zoomed out, something appeared. See, something appeared here. See it. Another keyframe appeared on its own. So let's see. See now. See, if you can see, the thing keeps getting closer, getting closer, getting closer, getting closer, getting closer, getting closer, and getting closer. So that is how you do for that of the zoom in effect. Okay, till it gets to that point and then it stops. All right, so let's do for that of the zoom out effect. Zoom out. So you add another keyframe, then you move to, I'll be fast with this. You move to this point and then you do what? You zoom out. So see now, you zoom out. If you see, another keyframe just appeared here too. So let's play from this point and see. So see now, it start going out. It start going, returning back to its position. So hope you are understanding what I'm saying. So let me undo all this and then let's go to the third kind of keyframe. All right, so the fast zoom in and the sharp zoom out. So the sharp zoom in, so let's do it this way. You click on this keyframe here and then you move a little. You don't even move very close and then you zoom out like this. Yeah, you zoom out and then you fix it this way. So let's play to see what we have now. No, I didn't do it the right way. So you undo drag again. So this is the fast zoom out. You do it this way and then you zoom in like this. Yeah, so let's play now. Let's see. You see what I'm saying? So you see, this is the fast zoom in and the fast zoom out. So it's the same thing for you zooming. If you want to zoom out, like zoom in, it's the same thing also. So let us zoom. Let me just say, let me make this a little like this. Yeah, Then let me add the keyframe, and then I want to zoom, sharply zoom and in. So this is it. So you see another keyframe has been shown there. So let's see. So you see, that's how you do it. All right, so what again? Let me go to this point. There's something I did here. All right, so this is the point I want to have. Let me just say, maybe you want to change the color of a particular video there and you don't want to split. You can use the keyframe also. So let us click on this color. Then you scroll down to effect. No, not effect, sorry. You click down to adjustment. Let me say you want to change the saturation to black and white. So you remove it a little so that the keyframe will pick what you want to do. Let me just put it at -9. Okay, then you click on OK. Then you move to this particular, to the point where you want the keyframe to work and stop. Then you go to this same adjustment, you go to saturation, and then you shift this thing down. So let's play to see what we have now. So see it. See what I'm saying? So you see how the color changed. You see how the color changed to black and white. Let me open this thing so that you see it well. So you are seeing how the color changed from black and white. So it's super simple to do. Then let us quickly do the last keyframe tool that I want to show you. Then we'll be off for this video. Is the volume up and the volume down effect. So let me quickly bring in an audio. Okay, so you can see the audio now. This is just like a background music. Then maybe I'm talking at the background now and I want to reduce the volume. Do you know what I'll do? I will click on this. I will come to that point I want to reduce the volume. Then I will go to the volume and just reduce maybe a little from inside. So then I will now scroll to the point I want it to get reduced. Then I will reduce it to 45. So let's see. So let's play now so that you see what I'm talking about. So from this point, so you see, as it came to that particular point where the keyframe is, the volume came down. And let me split this thing so that if you can see, there's a kind of gesture I made there. See, so let me say I'm speaking now. You will see that the music will come down while I do this. So let's do the opposite of this keyframe. Let's make the opposite of it. All right, let me just say, from this point, let me add a keyframe and then put the volume. I want to reduce it to 21. Then I will now shift to this point and then increase it to 100. So let's see now. So you see what I'm saying. So that's actually few things you need to know about the use of keyframe. I'll be creating another video on this keyframe issue again. But for now, let us stop here. See you next time in my video. And try to practice, please. Try to practice, because if you don't practice, there's no way you're going to learn. So try and practice and give me feedback. Thank you for watching.